Welcome back to our special show, the NPA Mess. Have banks gotten incapacitated? Is there a better way to have cleaned up the banking mess? That's the question we're asking, and we've been speaking with Mr. Pratip Chaudhuri, former chairman of State Bank of India, Mr. Umarji, one of the authors of the Bankruptcy Code and a former legal advisor to the IBA, Rajat Bahl, director, CRISIL Ratings. Well, Mr. Chaudhuri, the fault of the promoters really in the entire NPA mess. Clearly, slowdown was one issue. Gas plant, power plants being put up and gas not being available is not their fault. But how much would you apportion blame to factors like, gas or non-availability of gas, and how much to probably gold plating, probably to promoters, being incompetent or outright corrupt?
No, I think it would be 90 and 10. For example, Latha, you mentioned the GVK group. But please also, just go to the Mumbai airport and see the kind of facility they have created. Now, Latha, I think all criticism should be based on an alternative and not on a rhetoric.
Yeah.
Now, supposing, God forbid, Mumbai airport for a particular 3 months or 6 months makes a cash loss for whatever reason. Now, what do you expect the banks to do? If you are the chairman of the bank or leading the consortium, will you shut off all payments? Will you cut off the electricity? Will you refuse electricity bill payments? Will you refuse payment of salaries? Now, if you allow, the outstanding goes on, and comes your favorite rhetoric that they have been colluding with the promoters and, increasing the outstanding. Now, look at the power projects, Power projects, they put up the plant, they sold the electricity to the discoms, and they never got paid. Now, how long can this go on? And the banks are, then what is the bank supposed to do? It should say, okay, your bills have not been paid, so you shut down the plant and retrench all your workers and close down all the facilities. No, I don't think the solutions are that simple. So you have to keep the fire going and hoping that things should improve. It is like a patient being admitted to a hospital.
Mr. Pratip Chaudhuri, I take your point. I take your point, but I have to come back to you on one point. I take your point. You said 90% the fault lies with slowdown and other governmental intransigence, not the promoter's fault. I have bought your point. I have bought your point. But my counter question is, see, there are some instances of probably something the taxpayer and the depositor cannot forgive because they are bailing out interns. One, take for instance, I have to take names here, SR Steel. You already got a package in 2003. It's a 22-year-old plant. You can't keep on, I didn't get the 2003 slowdown right. I didn't get the 2009 slowdown right. There's some incompetence
so
also that...
so what do you do? Stop paying SST checks from tomorrow?
At some point, you would have to ask them to get their own money for working capital. No, I'm asking you whether the blame also lies with promoters. Blame also lies with promoters.
No,
I can understand. I can understand the instances you said of airports.
Don't take the rhetoric so far.
Or of gas-based power plants where gas was not given.
For example, most of the power projects.
In a 20 years, you don't know how to run your steel plant properly. There is, you can't be restructured and restructured several times in your cycle.
Exactly. Now, are you saying the Tatas don't know how to make steel? Now, Tata Steel itself has made a loss of 1,500 crores. And we are glad that we have the rating agency.
But they are not NPA. They have not come for refinance.
No, they are not NPA, but
my point is a company is not blamed if they make losses, because in a commodity cycle you will make losses. Sure. But they are able to make good with their own money or with their reserves. You are a 22-year-old plant. You are making losses repeatedly, and through every cycle, if you are coming for refinancing, there's something wrong. Okay, as well. Let me come to Mr.
SR also, if you have taken names, now SR Oil, when they sold their stake in the SR refinery, they got a buyer from Rosneft. So are you saying that, I'm not holding a brief for them, but take the full picture. Are you saying they have never been successful anywhere?
Well, actually, that is a different issue. SR Oil also defaulted on their OFCDs. They defaulted on their OFCDs to debentures. Very small people got stuck with those debentures. That's another issue. My point is promoters also have to take a little bit of the hit. And what about, other well-known defaulters like, say, Winsome Diamonds or Zoom developers? Okay, let me come to Mr. Umarji on that. To what extent can the legal system or the bankers take some of these erring defaulters to to court or put them behind bars or seize their assets. See, the big anger of the citizen is that they have lavish lifestyles, some of them, even when they are defaulters. Does the legal system permit it? Is it all a limited liability case? Or is it that bankers should have taken personal guarantees? Mr. Umarji.
You see, one thing is very clear, that a mere non-payment of a debt or a default in repaying a loan is not a crime. So it is a breach of contract. And unless you are in a position to establish that there is a diversion of funds, the funds given by the banks have been utilized for some totally different purpose or have been used for some personal use, and there is some fraudulent act on the part of the promoters, any criminal action is not possible against the company and its directors. It has to be established. And the other aspect of this is that conducting the business fraudulently or in an unlawful manner has been made an offence under the new Companies Act 2013. Conducting a business fraudulently is punishable with imprisonment up to 10 years.
Yeah.
There is a serious fraud office established under the Act. Now it is for this office, serious fraud office, to conduct an investigation, establish that the business has been conducted fraudulently, and prosecute the directors and promoters who are responsible for it.
Yeah, I take your point. Actually, yeah, go ahead.
It is not enough to say that they have defaulted and therefore they have committed some crime.
Okay, very quickly, since we are out of time, Mr. Umarji, Mr. Pratip Chaudhuri said 90% blame lies on the system, the permissions, the slowdown, and 10% on errant promoters. What would be your apportioning of blame? How much to the bankers who are probably incompetent, how much to promoters who are incompetent, and how much you would say it's not incompetence, it is the economy?
I would agree with Mr. Chaudhuri about 90 and 10%.
All right. Well, that's two stalwarts saying that you can't really blame people for the economic slowdown. But very quickly, Rajat, what would be your take? If you looked at international comparisons, have we handled this slowdown very badly? Is this a question of bandwidth competence, bandwidth inadequacy of bankers in India, or is this internationally just as bad?
It's definitely a blame. I wouldn't be able to say how much percentage is to the bankers versus to the promoters, but definitely banks should be owning up to a lot of this blame. Internationally or in India, the practices of appraisal need to be same, which is something where banks have been lacking, quite a few banks. If you speak to them, a lot of them just depend on a third-party evaluation or a lead bank having done their evaluation, and then what we've seen, a consortium-based lending happening. I don't think any bank, however small, should be taking any exposure in any company where you don't understand the risk. That's of prime importance. If we want to act as one public sector bank and that one has done it and so I'm okay doing it, lending to the same company, then why have so many banks? You might as well end up having just a few banks. So I think the blame should be taken by the bankers as much, because they have been lacking in their appraisal of the risks to begin with, and then they get into the spiral of having to on-lend more and what we call greening, evergreening, and so on. That's a spiral that comes much later.
Out of time. But I take on board the experience of all of you gentlemen. Yes, the slowdown is to a large extent to be blamed, and even governmental pressure. After all, it was in 2009-10, wasn't it, when the government pressured the Reserve Bank into increasing the exposure of banks to infrastructure companies. I mean, there was all-round pressure that, banks have to be the vanguard of development. So, the political rhetoric of the day also cannot be forgotten. As well, you have a lot of promoters who have gotten away with murder. But the key point to note is that the legal system and the manner in which guarantees are taken, a lot of the big boys cannot be put behind bars, nor their farmhouses and their jets seized, because the limited liability makes only the part of the equity that they have given to be sacrificed. So that NPA problem does become the problem of the fisc and the problem of the depositor, which is unfair. Perhaps we can frame better laws and have better diligence in the days to come when this next slowdown hits us. Mr. Chaudhuri, Mr. Umarji and Rajat, thank you very much for joining me in this conversation.